Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption. Hey, it's Wednesday evening. Hey everybody, it's Militiaman. Just want to let you know that we have a few topics I'd like to get with you on. I'm gonna try to set the stage of a few things, so just bear with me. But it's really, some of the stuff is really fascinating because it ties in, I think, what we've been seeing as far as chronological events. I don't need to go back over the stuff that we've done in the past too much, but you might hear it and you might catch it a little bit, but hey, let's just stick with this. The European Parliament is in the process of establishing the Parliamentary Partnership Committee with Iraq. Okay, so that's the EU. And they're going to be talking about a few things of like implementation of mutual obligations, and they're going to be like in a partnership and a cooperation agreement between Iraq and the European Union. So I think you want you to understand that when I talk about that, we're talking about something in the past too, is that the World Trade Organization is involved. And if that's part of it, whether we like it or not, it's not me. It's just that's just the way this world works. Okay, so moving on is that the next item that I'd like to talk to you guys about is the Foreign Minister of Affairs. Okay, he's been discussing with the Commissioner of the International Partnerships in the European Union issues of common interest. Well, again, a Minister of Affairs is Fawad Hussein. If you remember back not too long ago, he had a really big video, probably about half hour, 45-minute long, that talked about the exchange rate of Iraq. I'm not going to get into that, but I just want you to set the stage that that's part of this process. The next thing is that there's an article out today that's talking about Iraq is the new Silk Road between the Gulf and Turkey. Well, okay, what's the implications of that? Well, where's Soudani? Al-Soudani, the prime minister, he's in Turkey. So what are we talking about? We're talking about trade. We're talking about business. We're talking about water. Okay, so when Iraq goes into an infrastructure build out, they're going to need water. They're going to need housing for the people that are going to be coming into this country to help rebuild it. It's not just going to be about Iraq. We've been saying that for years now. It's like everybody says it's all Iraq does this, Iraq does that. But if you're not taking into consideration, there's so much more to the story. It's about a global and a regional situation. We're going to build a country, a war-torn country, back to a Mecca, if you will, something similar, a Babylon. It's not me. It's just the fact is that this is what they're talking about. When they talk about the Silk Road, they're going to engage different countries, land, sea, and air to facilitate a massive growth movement. It's just the way it's going to be. So interestingly enough, though, when I get into that, then here's an article. It's reading the central bank strategy of Iraq, the central bank strategy, the next stage. Well, what's the next stage? The final stage. If you're going to go to a private sector, going from a public to a private, you're in the final stage. That's my view. So it says the central bank strategy for the next stage is to advance the banking sector. Who's saying this? Samir al-Nasiri. Who is he? He's the governor, central bank advisor. Okay? So we're going to get into a few of those things. Well, let's backtrack just a little bit, and we'll go from there. Again, when I said that there's a committee in the European Parliament, they all got together with Iraq, and what they're talking about is the implementation of mutual obligations and those partnerships and cooperations. Well, okay, so this isn't something that's totally new. It's happened a little bit in the past, because who's involved? We talked about that. It was the WTO. They're going to make money coming and going. Every widget, everything that comes across those borders, whether we like it or not, and everybody that's out there, trust me on this one. It's just the way the world works, whether we like it or not. If you don't like the central banks, go vote, okay? But it's not my issue. And also my curls, I like them. So you guys enjoy. The important role that the parliamentary diplomacy plays in the strengthening of the relations between Iraq and the European Union. they stress how important this role is. It's awesome. These guys are they're moving in a direction to facilitate trade. Okay. It says, in addition to the government's primary mission to advance the economic reality by carrying out radical economic reforms and combating corruption. Well, what are radical reforms? What are those? To me, they're completely different than they were in the past. They're doing electronic borders. They're doing electronic government. They're doing electronic banking. And they have security and stability all built into those processes. So we're going to see that. And then it comes back to is that countries are getting together in all these meetings. We talked about Istanbul. We talked about New York City. We talked about Washington, D.C. We talked about the European Union and back again, so forth. But what they have is rapprochement. If you guys don't know what that is, I suggest you Google, look what it does, look what it means, what it does mean. It means that they have a good relationship. And that's that major role that they're going to start to be playing and preparing for this whole new transition. So that's a big thing that we're going through. So anyway, one of the second articles I was talking about was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs discusses with the Commissioner for International Partnerships in the European Union. What do they have? They have common interests. What do they mean by common interest? They're going to make some money. That's just the way it is. So the Deputy Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs, Fawad Hussein, he joins this Juta Orfalanen, forgive me, but they have a cooperation council that is meeting and in respect to the European Union, and they did that this week in Brussels. And so you go, well, why are we all doing this now? You have Al Sudani, who is in Turkey doing water deals, $20 billion deals. You have Fawad Hussein, foreign minister, involved in all these different deals that are in the EU, WTO, France, Paris Club, all those things, Paris Agreement, climate change, all that stuff they want to feed us. They're telling us this, okay? And this is really a big deal. This particular situation, I'm going to read to you, and forgive me, but I'm going to read to you because I don't have it memorized, a very important paragraph. And it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that stated, during the meeting, they discussed issues of common interest, including strengthening the role of the private sector in Iraq. They're transitioning towards a green economy and renewable energy, digitization of the Iraqi economy in the financial, commercial, agriculture, and energy sectors, especially supporting the youth and the women segments. That's a big deal these days. Women are very important in our economy, in our society. They need direction. They need to be recognized. They haven't been in this country, which is really important. And so there's a need for Iraq to join the financial institutions in the European Union, such as the European Bank for Reconstruction. Okay? Everybody needs a house. We all need a kitchen. We all need housing. Okay? And development in the European Investment Bank was emphasized due to its important role in gaining the confidence of the European investors in supporting and facilitating the investment process in Iraq. So it's going to the private sector. That's their whole focus. And that's what you and I and everybody else are waiting for, is for the private sector. You're not going to get into the private sector without having an international acceptable exchange rate. Okay? They didn't do it at 1360 or 1166, 1192, 1460, 1310. Okay? 1310 today, right? Well, what are they going to do when they change it to 1132? Are they going to go to an international compliant currency at 1132? Or what's the reasoning behind them doing that? Think about it for a little while, because it's not going to happen. You're not going to go to the international market and be Article 8 compliant at 1132. They're doing it to do things. They have a manipulation situation. They want people to get the whole process understood. And if they don't get it understood, unfortunately, there's going to be some people that are left behind, and they're not going to make it. In a sense that they'll make it, but they're not going to make it financially. They're going to have a little bit of a tough time. So ultimately, these key points. the deal with Turkey is really important because, first off, I talked about housing. I talked about people having a place to live. Well, they're going to need water, and we need to know where that water is coming from. So just within the last 24 to 48 hours, al-Sudani's met with the president of Turkey, and they've come up with an agreement for what it looks like. It's going to be hammered out, but what looks pretty positive is they have water flow from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and they're going to have that fresh water, drinking water, okay? And so to facilitate people to have housing, commercial projects, industrial projects, they're going to need that water. And so if they come to an agreement, then obviously that's going to be a benefit for us to move forward. And it looks like they've hammered that out. So in effect, though, it's like this one specific project they're talking about will serve tens of thousands of jobs of opportunity in Iraq, from Basra to the south to the Turkish border. So what they're going to do is they're going to open up that channel of trade from the south to the north. And it's going to be immense. And we're talking about the Silk Road. That's what we started off earlier on. The Silk Road effectively is that this port of Fao in Basra is going to be a massive endeavor. And some of it's already been going on and will be, I think there's some targets of 2025 to be fully completed, or at least close. So ultimately, when we come back to all of this in full circle, is that I set the stage, is that we've had key figures in different parts of the world for the last few months and the last few days. All of them are coming home, and they have an agenda. And one of those agendas is actually to get their financial system, which we've seen for the last few months, is that since November of last year, they've been moving from one thing to another. It's really kind of a brilliant situation where they've been ceasing the multi-currency practices, which is not using the dollar. It's going to be using the dinar, but they're also going to be able to clear on these new platforms all these different currencies of the world. We talked about the ISO 20022, and it has to do with not just the United States of America, it has to do with all central banks in the world. They talk about that stuff. But that ISO 20022 is going to be fully engaged on the 23rd, which is tomorrow. And so when we get past that, you go, well, what's next? It's that, well, they have that communication for international trade. So when the United States Treasury, U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, Janet Yellen, Powell get together on this last Sunday, tell you there's an implementation between the Credit Suisse problem, there's a banking issue, then you have the ISO coming online, fully advanced system, okay? People suggest that's part of the quantum financial system interlinking. All of these things happen to facilitate liquidity around the world to keep a contagion because of the Silicon Valley Bank and others. At the same time, you got to go, wait, hold on. What are we doing here? How are we going to get this liquidity for all these transactions and all these different things in the world? Well, they set it up on a new digital system. I'm not saying that they're going to be doing all these conspiratorial things. I'm just saying that these guys are doing things that are trying to facilitate a smooth and functional transition is part of the process, okay? Effectively, look, the deputy governor of the central bank revealed that it was directions and plans of the central bank for the next stage. What's the next stage? I mean, it's like, well, what do you mean the next stage? It's like, well, how many stages have we been through? Well, we've been through a lot. We know there's been packages, package 1, package 2, package 3 for rolling out the banking aspect. But why in the world do we have the next stage? Well, the next stage at this stage of the game is the final stage. That's my view. And what it means to me is that when they reveal the directions and the plans of the central bank for the next stage, to advancing the banking sector. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get deposits. They want to lend money. They've got to a bottleneck, in my view, that suggests that they've got to a stage when they've talked about the 70 trillion and all these different things and these percentages, that they need to lend money. Banks have to have a liquidity issue. They have to get deposits so that they can lend. They need to get that money that's out there, not circulating. And that's where they're working at. And says they need to enter in a new phase that depends on the standards of real banking and the work scale, which is local and international. So preparing for a national strategy is it's basically getting the country to become open to the world. Sovereignty, okay? Nationality. It's a sovereign situation. You've got to look at it in a different context sometimes. A country, a nation, but a country and nationality are not necessarily always the same thing, okay? So, but when they say preparing for the national strategy, that means preparing for their sovereignty. That means they're opening up for the world. We're on the same level, same playing field, okay? So regardless of if they have renewable energy products or if they have agriculture or they have industrial aspects, the point is that all of those things are combined in that national strategy. Another one of the environments that they talk about is enabling banking sector to be able to create banking financing by itself by attracting deposits. That's what I was talking about earlier, is like deposits and balancing between deposits and granted loans. That's going to be a key marker for this whole system to get started and finished, is that they loan money. They get deposits, they get that large amount of money, that 70 trillion, if that's what it truly means. There's a lot of debate on that 70 trillion. Okay, I'm just giving you the numbers that Moshe Alalak has said, the central bank governor. But think about it. If you think deep on this, if they change the exchange rate and they reduce that exchange rate by 1,300%, let's call it. Let's just use that as a hypothetical. They don't need that much money to cover it, because if that new currency covers it, you can see a difference. It's not into oblivion that you have to have this money around the world to cover all that money. But once you reduce it, and you'll see it in your own terms, I think you'll agree with me, and I could be wrong. Might have some blowback on this one, but I don't care. I know where we're headed. These guys are looking to create an environment to bring Iraq into a private sector, and to do so, they're going to need to be able to make that private banking, public banking sector. They need to be in the same page, and they need to get and stimulate the citizens to get the money in. That's merchants, industrial, commercial, agricultural. They need to do that, and to get them in there to get that money into that system so that it can circulate, to percolate this whole situation. And that's what I think. That's what Alex's whole goal is going to be. So basically, the banking sector must be a key partner with the central bank, implementing a national effort strategy for the electronic payment system. That electronic payment system is what? We know that. It's the SWIFT. It's the new SWIFT, ISO 20022. They're doing that, right? So they're trying to get everybody on the same page at the same time. So, and that's going to kick up a new thing. And what they want to do and how they're going to try to incentivize, that's what Alak has said, central bank governor, is to incentivize the process by bypassing complex procedures in opening accounts, providing services, expanding the bank density, achieving the geographical in the banking sector. And they will, effectively partner with the central bank in implementing a national effort to strategize for the electronic payment system. So payment systems, electronic, everything's going to be on the same platform. That's what I'm getting from this. So when I said, again, the bypassing of complex procedures, that's like in opening accounts and providing services. They're expanding the banking products. They're going to geographically throughout the whole country try to get everybody to be able to be busy with the banking works. They need to understand how that's going to work. And in so doing, by creating these environments with all these different deals that we talked about from different countries, it's going to be attracting currency into circulation. Currency into circulation. Alok talked about 70 trillion. I'm not so sure he's talking about 70 trillion like just got started today, but let's just put it this way. It's a lot of money, but then again, you got to think about the context. I already mentioned that. We'll leave that alone. But interesting enough, a lot of that money, which is outside the banking system, needs to come back into the system so that it can reflect a financial inclusion. Financial inclusion just means all the people, all the merchants, all the industries, commercials, all that kind of stuff. And it also requires diversification of a credit portfolio. Again, they're going to come back to what? The failure that we had in the United States of America, which was the SVB. Okay, that bank had a problem. Other 3 or 4 banks had problems. Credit Suisse had a problem. The facility would come back full circle. The talk on Sunday was from Janet Yellen and Powell about the Credit Suisse implementation. Didn't disclose what it was about, other than we find out Monday it was a dollar swap line that they could help all central banks going out until April of the end of April, so that they could have liquidity. And so what we're going to see is that we've found that we've talked about this over and over again. It's not always about Iraq. It's about Iraq, though. So anyway, last thing I'm going to say is that Al Sinuri, who is an advisor to the central bank, he had a lot of good words to say. And he reiterated again today exactly what Alok has said. And he's the advisor, and when he speaks, most people listen, okay? We all listen to the central bank governor, but when Al-Nasuri, forgive me, when he speaks to, and he reiterates it, and he drives it home, it means that there's things that are moving. So in this stage, the final stage, what we're expecting is the education of the citizens. And on the street, we're hearing that the citizens have been told about new things that are coming, and it has to do with their currency. Not money, but currency. So when they talk about that stuff in a religious manner, we really need to pay attention to that. And when they say it, they do it really quietly. So when the Grand Ayatollah al-Sistani tells the citizens in his dialogue about what you can do and what you can't do, those citizens take that stuff seriously. And that's really important, because at this stage of the game, the AOK, if you will, of how you can do business and how you can treat money is going to be important. But if they talk about things like currency and they try to soften that during private time in, say, the mosques and education, that's understandable. It's going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. But what we're hearing is that since the al-Sistani has spoken about that, I think it's very important that we pay attention and listen to them, because when he spoke, the citizens listen. So we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, all these things that I gave to you guys tonight come from the real news. The Samson the Great, she brings this to us. We have a bunch of people in Patreon that help analyze this and help go over it. So please take into consideration the content that we bring. So if you like us, please subscribe, and please feel free to help us out. Thank you.